So today I'm going to be taking a crack at answering who is the top Espada, the 10 blades, the people who keep wrecking Ichigo non-stop, eyes and subordinates, whatever you want to call these guys. Yeah, let's get into it. So, we only have really three main contenders actually for the top Espada, at least in the Arrancar arc or Awakened Moon arc. So with this, the top candidates are Stark, Yami, Ukiura. I mean, unless you really think Baragon and Holybell are really scaling to these guys, which I don't really think so. And to be honest, I don't even think really Stark actually even scales to Yami or Ukiura. I mean, unless you want to bring up some more arc shenanigans, but that's its own thing in itself. So I want to address the War Arc real quick too, just because War Arc is it's kind of nuts. It actually makes scaling these guys really difficult for multiple different reasons. It also complicates the story quite a bit too, but yeah, let's get into it. Stark, right? He fights Shunsui, and Shunsui is very prevalent in the War Arc. A couple different reasons. He becomes a commander-in-chief, and he fights none other than Lily Alberto, one of the Royal Guard. So, with the Royal Guard, they're all really powerful in their own right. But in order to scale them, we actually have to go over Kenpachi. So the reason we have to go over Kenpachi is because in order to prepare for the War Arc, he actually has to go train with Unohana. And after he's done training with Unohana, he actually fights Gremmy, which all the Royal Guard should scale above Gremmy, as Gremmy was stated to actually be the strongest Espada. Strongest Quincy during the first invasion. Well, unless you think he actually really scales above Yuha and Hashwalth, which I'm not really inclined to believe. Kenpachi, before he fights Gremmy, right, fights Unohana for his training, in order to gain his real powers, in order to first hear Zanpato for the first time and gain his real strength. Kenpachi was already fighting base Unohana, was getting the Unohana, went into her Shikai, and then released her Bankai to heal him over and over again. Now, as most people know, the Shikai and Bankai multipliers, they boost his power a lot, so he gets a bunch of Zenkais after getting killed a bunch of times. And with the Shikai, it's a 5 times multiplier, and then Bankai, it's 10. So if you think Unohana was actually going to have Kenpachi in base, and then he got a bunch of Zenkais on top of that, then his power would be over 50 times stronger than what he originally had when he was fighting Unohana. Then you get a multiplier for Kenpachi's Shikai, which he has to release on Gremmy in order to fight him, meaning he's over 250 times stronger. And then on top of that, there's the Royal Guard, which all the captains who go up there and fight should at least be at that level, and then they all have to use their Bankais to fight them. Now, I'm not saying that Stark is of that level, but I'm saying if you do acknowledge the fact the Royal Guard are stronger than Gremmy in their base, and then Shunsui has to fight them, and he scales to Kenpachi, which he should, then that would make Stark more or less of that level. I'm not really inclined to believe that Shunsui was going all out on Stark, as he took the fight very, very casually. I mean, number one, he didn't even use his Bankai, even though, he thought he had to, but I really don't think that's the case, considering, what he does later on. Stark even releases a stronger technique, and, Shunsui still takes him out with just a Shikai, which is pretty nuts. Then on top of that, he's just super casual during the entire fight. Like, he sits there, Stark's just like, hey, I want to see your Bankai, after seeing what Toshiro did to Holybell, and Shunsui saying, hey, won't surpass me or whatever. Then he fires off a Sero, and Shunsui's just like, yeah, Sero's not really going to do anything to me, it can't kill me, I'm a captain, I know it like the back of my hand. And then on top of that, he starts rapid firing, and he's still like, nope, not enough. And then he gets shot point blank with one, and Yamamoto, like, he thinks he's dead or whatever, which that's really surprising in itself. He lives through it, and then, Stark even beating down both the Visors and releasing Los Lobos. Shunsui's still super casual. He's just like, oh, you almost got me with that one. Oh, and by the way, I was going to tell you how my powers work. You figured them out too quickly. You're a little too smart for me. Anyways, like I said, if you believe that Shunsui was actually going all out against Stark, which I don't really think he was, that pretty much answers that question. But if you do, then he wrecks all of the Espada. Kenpachi, like I said, fought Yami, not just in his first release, but his second release, if that's what you think that form was. And then on top of that, getting all those other multipliers on top of that, and Shunsui actually fights Stark. But like I said, I'm not really inclined to believe that, considering the War Arc and it's its own thing, and all those shenanigans going with it. And then on top of that, you know, just how casual he was with him, and he still had enough energy to go fight Aizen afterwards. Anyway, we move on to the other two Espada, both Yami and Ukiura, Ukiura, right? Ukiura is a thing. So he not only has a first release, but he has a second release. And it's kind of narratively implied that he's kind of above Stark. So is Yami, that those two are just the strongest Espada outright. And I mean, unless you actually believe that Aizen didn't know about their secret releases, which, you know, it's Aizen. He should definitely know about that. But, you know, if you think he didn't and that their releases weren't included, which either way it doesn't matter, really. It really doesn't matter, considering how strong Ukiura is when he fights, and then the statements based upon Yami about him being the strongest Espada just straight up, just in his first release without him having to use his rage power up, or second release, or whatever the f you think that form is. But anyways, Ukiura can also amp his attacks too, right? So on top of having a second release, he can amp his attacks by 10 times their original strength with his Cero Oscuras, and he has his Lance too, which is even stronger than that, which, you know, we see in the fight with Hollow Ichigo, which that's a huge thing too. He fights in Hollow Ichigo, right? The same Hollow Ichigo, I guess you should say Shiro or White Zangetsu, whatever you want to call him. I'm just gonna call him Shiro, make things easy. Shiro fights Ishin, and Ishin fights Aizen. With Ishin, it's not really implied he got any weaker or any stronger after getting his Soul Reaper powers back, and this is huge too, right? Because Ishin's actually able to fight Aizen somewhat. Now I say somewhat because that's very ambiguous. It's kind of its own thing because of the Hogyoku, what happened with that, and then Aizen having to fight the 13 captains. He had to fight Shinji, he had to fight Yamamoto, and you know, then he took a hit from Ichigo, and then like I said, the Hogyoku, which like I said, doesn't really change too much in this situation. Stark, right? He's never really implied to be strong enough to really fight Aizen, which Ukiura, like I said, fights Shiro, who fights Ishin, who fights Aizen. Now it sounds like I'm doing a lot of like really verbal gymnastics and linguistics to get to this point, but like I said, these people are all relative to each other, and I mean, if Ukiura fought somebody who is that strong, then that means he should be relative in strength, considering, you know, he was actually pushing him and made him fight for real. Like, he was using a Ceros, he also used another hollow technique as well in there, Sonitos, and it was pretty intense. Like, you know, he went very far in the fight, ripping off his arms, firing off multiple Ceros. It made Ukiura even whip out his land. Anyway, where I'm going with, if you're not relative to somebody in strength, then you shouldn't be able to fight him. And we already went over this in my last video, where I was just like, hey, the statement from Kenpachi from the very first arc still stands. If you don't have enough Ryatsu, you can't damage your opponent, and you shouldn't even be able to more or less even fight them, let alone injure them. And like I said, Stark isn't really implied to be that strong that he's able to fight Aizen. He more or less just gets a concussion like the rest of the Espada just from Aizen's Ryatsu alone. So like I said, it's more or less implied that Ukiura should be above Stark, and that Yami should be above Ukiura based upon the statements. Yami, right? He felt the Ryatsu of not only Ukiura, he felt him in second release, and he was just like, oh, okay, that's cool, I'm gonna go kill the guy that just killed Ukiura. Everybody's seen what Ukiura can do, and I already went over why Ukiura should be really powerful, right? He should be able to more or less fight Ishin and Hollow Ichigo, who both fight Aizen. Now, he felt his Ryatsu, and was just like, I'm gonna go kill the guy that just killed Ukiura. He felt that Ryatsu, and was just pretty sure I could still kill him. And then there's the statements about him just being the strongest in terms of just Ryatsu. And we're not even talking about when he gets even stronger later on. We're just talking about base, his release state in base, and he was stronger. And there's more to back this up too, because if you think about it, Aizen, right, he prepared for two, technically maybe three threats. The two threats were, well, the two primaries, right, were Kenpachi and Yamamoto. Now, with Kenpachi and Yamamoto, he had a contingency plan for Yamamoto, right, which was Wonder Lace. So he already had a way to deal with them, but he didn't necessarily have a way to deal with Kenpachi. Now, he knew how strong Kenpachi could get, and he was kind of afraid of that, because he was just like, okay, you know, that might be a problem. And he wanted to seal him in Wake of Mundo so he could go into his Hogyoku form before he fought him. because he knew that if he took off all of his restraints that he wouldn't be able to beat him. Now, who better to stall Kenpachi than would be your top Espada, which would be Yami. Why would you put somebody weaker in there to go stall Kenpachi, knowing he could probably manhandle Stark based upon just the feats with, Yami alone? Like I said, just in his base release, and then even later on. And it also takes all the effort of Byakuya. He even takes hits from, like I said, a stronger Ichigo. It's just like, you want to say that Stark is above him. There's no way unless you bring in the War Arc scale. Like, it's not happening. He even gives Kenpachi somewhat of a rough time. It even makes Byakuya step in. There's no way. He's just way above him at that point. Like, it's narratively implied, it's stated multiple times, and just because of the amps and, it doesn't even make sense story-wise for Stark to even be there, or to even be considered to be the strongest, just because, like I said, you're getting a concussion from just the dude's Ryatsu. That's not even him actually trying to fight you, it's just him flexing on you and going, similar to what Kenpachi did to Ichigo. Yami's the strongest Espada. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.